Hi, and welcome to Why Do Countries Exist, an episode on British political parties. So today's episode was requested by Sinn Fein Productions on YouTube. If you want me to make an episode on another country's political parties, please either comment it down below, send me an email, or you can go to the request form I have in the description. I currently have requests to do Russian parties, which I'm going to do before the election in September, Portuguese parties, French parties, and then French territorial politics, Spanish parties, which I think I'm going to break into 2 episodes, Indian parties, which I think I'm going to break into 3 episodes, Danish parties, and Italian parties. Also, one brief thing before I begin. There's a series of lectures on YouTube by Professor Vernon Bogdanor that talks about the history and importance of several parties I'll be talking about today. I'm going to put a link in the description and recommend that if you want to learn more, you can check those lectures out. So, one of the most important details you should know when talking about British politics is how regionalism and nationalism affect politics there. The UK is divided between 4 constituent countries: England, which is where the majority of the population lives and is where the capital London is located, Scotland, which is the 2nd largest country by population, Wales, the 3rd largest, and finally Northern Ireland, the smallest by population. All of these 4 countries will have different political parties contest them and are unique to that country. Sometimes it's kind of minor, like the difference between Wales and England, which all have the same major parties, both Wales having a separatist party present in it. However, when comparing Northern Ireland to England, you'll find none of the major English parties holding any real presence in Northern Ireland, with unique Northern Irish parties contesting and dominating politics there. Separatism is a dominant theme in the non-English parts of the UK. Within Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, significant segments of the population advocate for leaving the UK. The reason for separatism is varied between all 3, and you can make an entire podcast dedicated to explaining the details of separatism in these regions. However, one thing uniting all 3 is that each of the 3 are a part of the Celtic nations. These are 6 regions throughout Western Europe that speak a Celtic language. These nations have historically had their Celtic language suppressed, and starting in the 20th century, movements began to emerge to protect these often dying languages, with many within these movements advocating for greater political autonomy or independence to protect these regions' language, culture, and resources. It's far more complicated than just that, with a lot of history and twists and turns, but that's the most basic background for you. Also, I'm sure you have all heard about the UK leaving the EU, and the long saga that was Brexit. All I'll really say is that it happened, and many, both those that like and dislike the EU, still are upset with the current deal that was created, so just keep that in mind. The main legislative body of the UK is the House of Commons, which is primarily where we will examine parties from. It has 650 members of Parliament, or MPs, who are elected from 650 electoral constituencies. MPs are elected via first past the post, so whichever MP candidate wins the most votes in an election within that district will become that constituency's MP. They don't need to win a majority of the vote, just more than everyone else. MPs will write rules and regulations for Britain and will elect the Prime Minister and their cabinet. There also is the House of Lords, which serves as the upper chamber for Parliament. It is made up of 792 lords who enter the office in 3 ways. Firstly, you can become an important Anglican bishop, which will give you a seat in the House of Lords. Secondly, you can be born a lord with your family likely coming from the old British noble class. Or finally, the Prime Minister of the country can appoint you into becoming a lord. They will review laws made by the House of Commons and send them back if they disapprove. It's pretty weak compared to the House, and I won't focus on it too much. Finally, the last legislative body I'll pay attention to are the 4 regional legislatures found throughout the country. There is the London Assembly, the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Parliament, and the Northern Irish Assembly. These 4 regional legislatures have a significant amount of autonomy and powers, although the central government has ultimate authority over them. In case you're wondering why England doesn't have its own regional government, the thinking is that since English MPs dominate and make up so much of the House of Commons, there isn't really a reason that England needs its own parliament, although in recent years a growing number of English have demanded their own regionalist government. So now let's talk about the parties. First, we have the ruling Conservative Party. The Conservatives are conservative, with it representing the right in the country, and many political scientists will say it's one of the most successful political parties of all time, although maybe not the best. It technically operates in every single region in the UK. However, its Northern Ireland branch is largely irrelevant. It has historically been divided into several factions. There is a pro-EU and anti-EU wing of the party, there is a strongly socially conservative wing and a moderate social wing, and there is a strongly neoliberal wing and a more parentalistic economic wing of the party. However, generally, they all lean right, embracing traditional ways of viewing Britain. The party support base is often thought of as largely made up of the traditional aristocracy and upper classes, along with support from largely white pensioners and entrepreneurs. However, the Conservatives have always held support among a quite large segment of the working class, who often hold patriotic and traditional views of society. Much of their support comes from rural and suburban areas, in eastern England, the Midlands, southern and northeastern Scotland, and northern and central Wales. The party holds 363 seats in the House of Commons, 259 seats in the House of Lords, and is the main opposition party in London, Scotland, and the Welsh legislatures. The party is currently headed by Boris Johnson, an MP from London and the current Prime Minister of the country. The Conservatives believe in generally right-wing patriotic ideals. They are pro-NATO, want a large and strong military, see Britain's involvement in the world as positive, and are strongly opposed to separatism in the UK, or even just greater devolution in the country. It tends to believe in socially conservative policies, like supporting tough-on-crime laws, and wants to crack down on illegal immigration coming into the country. It backs privatization, and wants to avoid raising taxes, promising on its website not to raise the income tax, the value-added tax, or national insurance. It also seeks to increase funding towards education and the healthcare sector, wants to move towards renewable energy, generally opposes reform aimed at the monarchy and parliament, and it has been said that they, as a party, favor conventional wisdom over political theory. Dislike towards the Conservatives can fall into several different categories. Firstly, there are people who just don't like their policies, seeing them as too friendly towards big business and the rich, too stuck in tradition and unwilling to pass much needed reform, and or as the party that keeps them from leaving the UK, in mainly separatist circles. The many factions of the Conservatives has led to infighting from time to time, although it seems today most are united under Johnson. The party also has been accused of Islamophobia, or of having attracted Islamophobes into the party. For example, Johnson in 2018 said that Muslim women look ridiculous when in a burqa, and compared them to looking like bank robbers. Generally, this has led some, particularly among ethnic minorities on the left, to believe that the Conservatives are a party for whites, and don't care a lot about issues affecting them or their communities. Next, we have the second major party of the UK, the Labour Party. The Labour Party is the mainstream left-wing party in the country. The party operates in England, Scotland, and Wales. Much like the Conservatives, there is a fair amount of differences and factionalism in the party, with members ranging from very moderate social liberals to social democrats and democratic socialists, and even some more radical Marxist elements on the periphery of the party. You can also find, like the Conservatives, members who range from staunch Europhiles to those who strongly oppose neoliberal EU institutions. The party's support base is largely centered around the working class in the country, especially those in trade unions, although it also receives a lot of support among the urban intelligentsia, and also gets a lot of support among women, the youth, and ethnic minorities. Geographically, a lot of its supporters are found in urban centres like London, Manchester, Liverpool, and Cardiff, along with northern England and the Midlands, southern Wales, and in some areas of central Scotland. It has 199 seats in the House of Commons, 173 seats in the House of Lords, is the ruling party in both London and Wales, and is a part of the opposition in Scotland. The party is currently headed by Keir Starmer, an MP from London and the current leader of the opposition. Labour supports generally left-wing economics. It wants to expand the welfare state and increase funding for welfare, opposes excessive privatization, generally backs unions, and favors progressive taxes. It currently advocates for a Green New Deal, wants to focus on retraining workers for new industries that they feel would benefit the country, and wants to scrap tuition fees. It tends to oppose separatism in the country, but is usually in favor of further devolution, and will often support multiculturalism and progressive social movements. Now, you may have noticed, if you watched some of my previous political party episodes, or just comparing it to the Conservatives, that I'm not really saying a whole lot on Labour's policies, and that's intentional. The party is currently going through an identity crisis, with many both in and out of the party questioning what Labour really stands for besides not being the Conservatives. Factionalism and infighting between moderates and hardline socialists within the party has led many to see the party as largely ineffective. Labour also in recent years has come to be seen less as a party for working class Brits and more as a party for urban hipsters, ignoring many pressing economic and social issues for virtue signalling, with this problem dividing moderates and hardliners. There also have been accusations of anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, and even this falls along factionalism lines, with some of the more left-wing elements of the party accusing the anti-Semitism allegations in 2017 to 2019 as a smear to hurt then left-wing party leader Jeremy Corbyn, and the left of the party as a whole. The next party can be thought of more as a pressure group within a party, but I thought I'd still talk about it. The Cooperative Party is a left-wing party found within the Labour Party. It argues for cooperativism, which is essentially the idea of the general public cooperating together to build up a store, business, community, or whatever. For example, if you go to a co-op, the staff working at the store helps manage it, taking power away from private individuals or corporations and giving it to the workers and the general public. It operates within the Labour Party, with members of the Cooperative Party running under the Labour label and sitting with them in Parliament. It currently has 26 seats in the House of Commons, making it technically the fourth largest party in the House of Commons. It has 16 seats in the House of Lords, and many Labour members at the regional or local level are members of the party. It is currently headed by Jim McMahon, an MP from Manchester and the current Shadow Secretary of State for Transport. Now we go to our first separatist party, with the Scottish National Party, or in Scots Gaelic, Party na Haisnéite na Alba, or in Scots, Scots National Party, or SNP. The SNP is a Scottish nationalist party, wanting Scotland to break away from the UK. It generally represents the left of Scottish politics, but also has more moderate and even right-wing elements of the party, acting as a catch-all for those opposed to the UK's rule over Scotland. The party's support base tends to be younger, earns less, and is often found in central and western Scotland, and in the Highlands. It currently has 45 seats in the House of Commons, and is the ruling party in Scotland. It is currently headed by Nicola Sturgeon, a member of the Scottish Parliament from Glasgow, and the First Minister of Scotland. The SNP first and foremost wants Scotland to break away, and wants to hold a second referendum on Scottish independence, hoping for a majority of Scots to vote yes, and wants Scotland to become a republic and join the EU. The party also wants to give greater protection to Scottish Gaelic, wants to remove nuclear weapons from Scotland, and favours a more environmentally conscious Scotland, although it also wants to build up the oil industry in Scotland and supports self-determination for movements around the world. It also wants to raise the income tax, generally backs progressive social movements, and wants to bring in more refugees into the country. The SNP's Scottish nationalist stance makes it disliked by Scottish Unionists, who wish to see Scotland remain in the UK. They tend to oppose Scottish nationalism due to arguing that Scotland leaving would hurt the Scottish economy, and potentially make moving between England and Scotland very difficult. It likely would be a multi-year process of attempting to craft a deal between Scotland and England, and generally would just be a complicated mess. You can also find people inside the Scottish nationalist movement opposing the SNP, criticizing the SNP for what they see as a more gradual approach towards independence, Eurosceptics accusing the SNP of trading one master, Britain, for another master, the EU, and people just disliking their policies or nature of the party. There also recently has been accusations that the party stole a bunch of funds meant to go towards a second independence referendum, and the party is currently under police investigation, although it's too early to tell what is actually going on. We go back to English-centric parties, with the Liberal Democrats. The Lib Dems operate in England, Scotland, and Wales. The Liberal Democrats are, as the name might suggest, liberal, representing the centre ground in UK politics, although it has moved slightly left in recent years. The Lib Dems came out of the Liberal Party, one of the dominant parties in Britain during the 19th and early 20th century. But since 1918, Liberals have acted as the UK's main third or fourth party. Its electorate is often made up of middle-class professionals, who often are older, found in urban and suburban areas, and tend to be highly educated. Its support base firmly stretched across wide areas of Scotland and Wales. However, after the 2015 election, the party lost a lot of its support, and it doesn't really tend to be in a single geographic area, but more as small dots on the map, although these dots tend to be centered in southwestern England, southwestern London, and the far north of Scotland. It has 12 seats in the House of Commons, 86 seats in the House of Lords, and is the smallest party in the Scottish, Welsh, and London Assembly. It is currently led by Ed Davey, an MP from London, and the former Secretary of State for Energy. The Lib Dems often talk about changing and altering the UK's political system and reforming it, is in favor of moving towards a proportional electoral system, supports federalism in the UK, and generally wants an even weaker House of Lords. It is strongly pro-EU, and has campaigned on rejecting Brexit and rejoining the EU. It wants to invest more in infrastructure, mental health and childcare, wants to raise the minimum wage, reduce national debt, and wants to build more social housing. It also backs progressive social policies, such as decriminalizing abortion, wants to support the Welsh language, and wants to reduce Britain's carbon footprint. It is said that the Lib Dems see their greatest success not when they do well in an election, but when other parties do badly. It is often seen as a party for dissidents from either the Conservatives or Labour that stay in the party for some time, but are never really loyal to it. This is a problem for the party, since it means it relies on other parties being weak and not it being strong, making it passive in British politics and really struggling to capitalize on its success. The Lib Dems' role as a centrist party also means many see them as spineless, something that was highlighted when they entered government with the Conservatives in 2010, and failed to fulfill some of their campaign promises. While the party has received some increase in support due to its strongly anti-Brexit position, it has often been called a zombified party post-2015. Next we go to the Democratic Unionist Party, or DUP. The DUP operates solely in Northern Ireland, and represents the Unionist community in Northern Ireland. This Unionist community is largely made up of Protestants, who are opposed to Irish separatists. The DUP represents the right of the Unionist, being conservative and nationalistic, and seeing themselves as decisively British. They get support, of course, among Protestants, particularly older Presbyterians, and the DUP vote is concentrated in the northeast of Northern Ireland, and in northern and eastern Belfast. It currently has 8 seats in the House of Commons, 5 seats in the House of Lords, and is tied for being the largest party in the Northern Irish Assembly. The party is headed by Geoffrey Donaldson, an MP from Lagan Valley, and formerly a member of the Northern Irish Assembly. The DUP is opposed to the reunification of Ireland and separatism in Northern Ireland, and opposes any attempt to separate Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK. This means it opposes border stops between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. It backs socially conservative policies like opposing both same-sex marriage and abortion, is pro-Israeli, wants to build a stronger police force, and wants to punish the perpetrators of Irish Republican terrorism. It also wants to build a bridge between Northern Ireland and Scotland, wants to increase tourism to Northern Ireland, and wants to reform the healthcare sector. The DUP has had a long history of being connected to Ulster Loyalist terrorism. The founder of the party, Ian Paisley, was involved in the formation of several Loyalist paramilitaries, like the Ulster Protestant Volunteers, Third Force, and the Ulster Resistance. Even as late as the 2017 election, the DUP was endorsed by several Loyalist terrorist groups. Admittedly, the party officially disavows terrorism, and did play an important role in helping create the peace treaty during the 90s, but it is still a very polarizing party. The DUP in recent years has also experienced backlash from the Unionist community, by failing to fight hard enough against border stops in the Irish Sea, and infighting within the party has led to several members leaving. Also, you can find opposition towards the DUP for their very socially conservative policies. We now go to the flip side of the DUP, with Sinn Fein, or translated from Irish, we ourselves. Sinn Fein is an Irish Republican party, hoping for Ireland to be reunified under a single Irish Republic. Sinn Fein uniquely operates in both Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland to the south of it. It leans left on economics, supporting a left-wing kind of Irish nationalism. The party gets most of its support among the Catholic minority in Northern Ireland, especially among the youth, and geographically in the southwest and southern and western Belfast. It has 7 seats in the House of Commons, and is tied for being the largest party in the Northern Irish Assembly. While the UK isn't a member of the EU anymore, Ireland is. So Sinn Féin does have 1 seat in the EU Parliament, from the Republic of Ireland, with its MEP sitting in the left of the EU Parliament group. It is currently headed by Mary Lou McDonald, a politician from the Republic of Ireland. The vice president of the party is Michelle O'Neill, who does live and operate in the UK, being a member of the Northern Irish Assembly and is the current Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland. Sinn Féin is unique in UK politics, in that even though it has seats in the House of Commons, it doesn't operate on the national level. Sinn Féin practices a policy known as abstentionism, so when the party wins seats in the House of Commons, its MPs refuse to take up their seats. They argue that since the UK has no legitimate claim over Northern Ireland, they therefore should not participate in the illegitimate House of Commons, and refuse to swear an oath of allegiance to the Queen. They will participate in regional and local governments, however, with it pushing for Irish nationalist and left-wing policies. Sinn Fein, like the DUP, has had a long history of ties to terrorist organizations. Sinn Fein during the Troubles was often seen as the political wing of the Irish Republican Army, or IRA. The IRA is the most famous and infamous paramilitary group that operated in Northern Ireland, performing bombings and assassinations against both British officials and army units, Ulster Loyalist and rival Irish Republican groups, along with committing sectarian attacks on Protestants, or even Irish Catholics, seen not to be sufficiently Republican enough. Sinn Fein, after 1998, has distanced itself and disavowed terrorism, although there still are lingering accusations against the party, and many still are distrustful. We go to another separatist party with Plaid Cymru, or translated from Welsh, the Party of Wales. The party represents Welsh nationalists, hoping for Wales to break off and form its own country. It is left on economics, and represents moderate socialist. Its support base tends to be found along the western coast of Wales, and the party is very popular among Welsh speakers in the region. It currently has 4 seats in the House of Commons, 1 seat in the House of Lords, making it the only separatist party to be represented in the upper house, and is the 3rd largest party in Welsh Parliament. It is currently headed by Adam Price, a member of the Welsh Parliament, and formerly an MP. Plaid Cymru wants Welsh independence, hoping for Republican Wales within the EU. It strongly promotes the Welsh language, hoping for it to be taught in schools and for it to grow among the population. It also supports greater environmental regulations, wants to combat racism and discrimination in Wales, wants to do more to support local business, wants to reduce the number of secondary homes found in Wales, and wants to make healthcare and public services cheaper and more available. Welsh independence compared to Scottish independence, or Irish reunification, seems very far off. Welsh separatism seems very tied to knowing the Welsh language, something that a little under 20% of the population can speak. This limits the support Welsh separatists, and therefore Plaid Cymru, have. It will have to be a goal of the party to expand out and connect with wider Welsh society, if it ever wants to expand. Welsh separatism is derided among Unionists, for much of the same reasons Scottish independence is criticized, with people generally seeing it as unrealistic and overly complicated. Next we go to the Social Democratic and Labour Party, or SDLP. The SDLP is a Northern Irish party, with it representing the moderate wing of Irish nationalist and is social democratic. It has ties with both the Labour Party, due to both being centre-left, and the Irish Fianna Fáil Party, another moderate Irish nationalist party. It gets a lot of its support in urban areas, such as the city of Derry and Belfast, and generally does well among Catholics and the middle class. The SDLP has 2 seats in the House of Commons, and is the 3rd largest party in the Northern Irish Assembly. It is currently led by Colm Eastwood, an MP from Derry, and was formerly a member of the Northern Irish Assembly. The SDLP supports the United Ireland, and wants to work towards a more gradual reunification, and supports the creation of a new Ireland Commission that will work with all the communities in Northern Ireland to help work towards reconciliation. It supports progressive social movements, wanting to promote racial equality, LGBTQ rights, and supports environmentalism. It also is pro-EU, wants to raise wages, wants to build more social housing, and supports increased power to regional officials in Northern Ireland. The SDLP is more moderate compared to Sinn Fein, which is something that sounds nice to some. Extremism and violence associated with many groups in Northern Ireland have left scars across the community there. However, what is apparent is that the SDLP plays a second fiddle to the more hardline Sinn Fein. Sectarian issues are still very present in Northern Ireland, and acting moderate can and has made the SDLP seem soft on issues that affect nationalist voters. And with that, the party has declined since the 90s. It seems very likely that Irish nationalists will stay with Sinn Fein, unless something dramatic changes in Northern Ireland that would convince them to start backing the SDLP. We go to our final separatist party, with the Alba Party. The Alba Party is a Scottish nationalist party, formed earlier in 2021. The party is a breakoff from the SNP, with former SNP party leader, Alex Salmond, founding the party after a dispute between him and current party leader Sturgeon. The feud seems to center on allegations that Salmond sexually harassed several female staffers and was generally unpleasant to work with, although the sexual assault allegations have been acquitted in court. The party seems to present itself as a more radical Scottish nationalist party, and also generally promoting centre-left domestic policies. The party currently has 2 members in the House of Commons, both defectors from the SNP. The party tried to run in the Scottish regional elections earlier this year, but failed to get any member elected. I don't really know what the future will entail for the party, but we'll just have to wait and see. We go back to English parties with the Green Party of England and Wales. This party is present in, surprise surprise, England and Wales. It backs green politics, meaning it is environmentalist, supports grassroots democracy, and generally is in favor of progressive social values. It typically appeals to disillusioned Labour or Lib Dem supporters, who feel that those parties aren't treating climate change as importantly as they should. They tend to be younger, more educated, and often are found in southern England, but I wouldn't really classify anywhere as a Green stronghold. It currently has one member in the House of Commons, 2 members in the House of Lords, and is the 3rd largest party in the London Assembly. It is currently headed by Sean Barry, a member of the London Assembly, and Jonathan Bartley, a member of a local council in London, although both are stepping down soon, with a new leadership race coming up later this year. The Greens' main focus is on stopping climate change and promoting environmentalism. It wants to reduce carbon emissions to net zero by 2030, supports a carbon tax, opposes nuclear power, wants to plant 700 million new trees, and wants to significantly reduce the use of fossil fuels in the UK. It supports the EU, and favors a move towards a more proportional electoral system, wants a directly elected House of Lords, and supports the right of self-determination for Wales. It also supports the universal basic income, is pro-choice, wants greater spending for local councils, opposes the privatization of the NHS, wants to make it easier to immigrate to the UK, and wants to reform and simplify tax laws while increasing taxes on corporations. The Greens have always been a fairly marginal force in UK politics. It never won more than 1 seat in the House of Commons, and while they have formed governments on a local level, they aren't really dominant anywhere. The UK's first-past-the-post system makes it extremely difficult for them to gain any seats, which prevents them from gaining more MPs to form a large voting bloc. While the Greens do want to change this by switching the UK over to a proportional system, it will be an uphill battle to change that system. The Greens also in general are stereotyped as being a fringe party and not worth really focusing on. It's seen more as a party for university-educated hippies and radical environmentalists to posture about the environment, rather than a party that can actually bring about meaningful change. The last party we will talk about is the Alliance Party of Northern Ireland. It is a liberal and centrist party, representing the middle ground between Unionist and Nationalist. It is associated with the Lib Dems. It gets support from both Catholics and Protestants, who oppose the sectarian division in Northern Ireland, along with minorities who don't feel represented by either community. The party's support base tends to be centered in Belfast, and the suburban and rural area right outside Belfast. It currently has 1 seat in the House of Commons, and is the 5th largest party in the Northern Irish Assembly. It is currently headed by Naomi Long, a member of the Northern Irish Assembly, and is the Minister of Justice for Northern Ireland. Alliance wants Northern Ireland to remain in the UK and within the EU. However, it also supports the Irish language to be protected, and supports increased autonomy and cooperation for Northern Ireland. It supports a policy of trying to heal Northern Irish society, punishing those who have committed crimes and violence during the Troubles, and wants to build an oral history archive that details people's experiences during the Troubles. It also supports renewable energy, supports multiculturalism and LGBTQ rights, wants to crack down on tax avoidance that large corporations and the rich often use, and supports greater regulation in the gig economy. Alliance, being a moderate party, will be accused by both nationalists and unionists of playing into the hands of the other. This means both communities generally are distrustful towards the party. There also seems to be some dislike that they back socially progressive policies, something in the more socially conservative Northern Ireland doesn't really play well to the average voter. So those are the UK parties. There's a lot of them, and you can really tell regionalism plays a big role. The 30-second summary would probably be there's the right-leaning Conservatives, the left-leaning Labour, the centrist Lib Dems, and the environmentalist Greens, and then a whole bunch of small regionalist parties that are either fighting against or for independence. There's plenty of other parties present in the UK that I could have talked about, but I decided not to. There's the Ulster Unionist Party that represents the more traditional Unionist. There's the Green Party in both Northern Ireland and another Green Party in Scotland. There's a whole bunch of these small localist parties that are found all throughout England and Wales. There's famously also UKIP and Brexit, or I think they're actually called Reform UK now, and those represent the very Eurosceptic, anti-EU sentiments in the UK. So yeah, maybe one day I'll do a video on that. If you want me to, just let me know, and I'll get around to it at some point in the future. I also think at some point I'll probably talk about the 2019 EU election and the role that a couple YouTubers had in that, and kind of their role in destroying UKIP as a legitimate force in British politics. But yeah, thank you for watching. The next video will be the history of Bolivia, and then I'll just go on from there. But thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. You can email me at whydocountries.exist for your thoughts, comments, suggestions, or hate mail. Take care. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.